I cared a lot, and I might have cared too much because we had lost a guitar player. And for the first record that would put us in this position to make a second one that people were going to care about is because a lot of people liked the first record. And the first record had another guitar player who was helping, doing a ton of heavy lifting with the songwriting and the guitar parts because he's a genius guitar player. So the pressure felt very much on me to do as much as possible and work my ass off.
So this week, we chose to continue our Philadelphia audio community doubleheader by having our good friend Joe Reinhart on the podcast. Joe has been involved in a number of awesome projects. He plays in Hop Along, Dogs on Acid, and produces a ton of other incredible records. Definitely go look at his discography. It's in the show notes. But we called him here today to talk specifically about one of his first bands, Algernon Cadwallader, and the album that they released in 2012 called Parrot Flies. This is the last album the band would make, and it became a really special one in the emo math rock community. So as Algernon gets set to reunite and head out on the road on their first tour in over a decade, we thought it would be fun to have Joe come in and unpack the making of this record. There's a lot of really interesting stuff about how he went through this and how he learned a ton in the process. I think you're going to really enjoy it, and it's a great precursor to going and seeing one of these shows this October. So have fun, enjoy, and we will catch you afterwards. When the world shut down in 2020, musicians and producers everywhere were forced to re-examine and reimagine their creative process. Without the possibility of in-person studio collaboration, the future of music production was anything but certain. But as the old saying goes, where there's a will, there's a way. And for those professionals who were determined to never compromise on the quality of their audio, the world-class engineers at Audio Movers established that way. By combining the HD streaming of lossless multi-channel audio straight from your DAW with the unique ability to adjust latency and bitrate, Listen To stands as the solution to unlocking global creativity in music production. Its power has been felt on Grammy Award-winning albums and on over 85% of all modern Abbey Road studio sessions. So stop letting your physical location dictate the quality of your work and the projects within your reach. For a free trial, just follow the link in our show notes and use the code PROCESS to receive 10% off the first year of your membership. Listen, if you're an artist or musician still struggling to find a better way to distribute and promote your music, and you haven't checked out DistroKid yet, then that needs to jump straight to the top of your to-do list. We are proud to have them back with us for another season of the record process, primarily because they, just like us, are committed to empowering and supporting independent artists like you. DistroKid is by far the most affordable service for distributing your music to all digital streaming platforms, and it comes with a bunch of tools to help you elevate your career in a ton of crucial ways. DistroKid not only allows you to spread your music across the streaming ecosystem, regardless of what platform might be top of your focus right now, but it also helps you share your story with labels using their unique upstream tool. You can engage with your fan base using DistroKid's text messaging feature, and they'll even help you create unique lyric videos that can help you promote your music better online. As a Record Process listener, you can get 30% off of your first year's membership just by heading to the show notes and signing up using our affiliate link there. And remember, we always love hearing what you're working on and how tools like DistroKid are helping you create some incredible moments for your fan base. So please don't hesitate to share them with us. And now, here's our interview. Joe Reinhart, thank you for being here. Welcome to the Record Process, buddy. How you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you for asking. I'm in the woods in upstate New York.
Yes, you are. For anybody that can't see, we're not one of those like highfalutin, high money podcasts where we do the whole YouTube thing just yet. But he has given us a tour of the cabin that y'all are at on a hop along off day. That's a view. That's what we call a view with a capital V. That's very nice. So we're gonna dive right in because you probably have some relaxing and lounging to take care of on the other side.
I'm doing it right now. I'm multitasking. No worries.
And we are honored to be one of those many multiple tasks. But we invited you on in the hopes that you might walk through a bit of the story behind the old Algernon Cadwallader record that came out in 2011 that y'all happen to be going and firing away live at, probably right around the time that this will be coming out, if everything goes according to plan. Parrot Flies. What a cool record. The last of the Algernon records and releases in a way, but we'll get into all that. So stars from the top, dude. I mean, if you're not familiar, for anybody that isn't familiar with this band, it's pause it right now, go listen to the catalog, and you will, and a lot of what we're about to talk about will make a ton of sense. But suffice to say, dude, you are in a world where there's a lot of bands that look up to this record and the ones that came before it, man. I think that's important to note. But talk to us about just like we won't spend too much time on it, but it's all relevant to where y'all were at with this release when you tracked it and when you put it out in 2011. Give us a little bit of a backstory of the band itself and kind of like how it came into being.
The backstory of the band itself. Well, you grow up or you don't grow up. Right. And at some point you discover something that makes you want to play music. You're like, so, it's something different for everybody, or every generation has its thing that it was. For me and a lot of my friends, it was like probably Dookie or, hearing Nirvana, and something clicks inside your brain and goes, I want to always do that. That looks like a lot of fun. Something about the sound is making my hair stand on end. I've never heard anything sound like fast, catchy, distorted music. What is going on here? Fast forward a bunch of bands later, a lot of tests not studied for in high school. You just play playing in a bunch of bands with your friends. And this was no different. I went to school with Peter and Colin, who ended up being in Algernon. And we knew Nick from playing in bands together in the Jersey scene. I went to school at Notre Dame for high school for 2 years. So like, I was just always going to shows in Jersey. But I digress. Like our previous bands had played together, and we were, screaming at each other, having some drinks at a party. And we were like, we should start a band, because everybody's in 8 different bands when you have time to be in 8 different bands. I wish I still had time to be in 8 different bands, but it doesn't always work out like that. But this was just one of them. This was just one of those things you started, and it's fun. And from us having this conversation to putting out the first record might have been 3.5 years or 4 years. So there was never a fire. It was just like fun. One of the many fun things we did with our time. And eventually we were like, oh, people are listening to this one.
Yes.
It was never like, well, we have to do this. This is so fucking important. It was just having fun and playing music. Those two things just went together. And this one resonated a little more than some of the other ones with people. And we were all kind of like, oh, what's going on here?
Dude, that's how it usually happened. I mean, and the kind of like letting go and if it gets distilled to the cliche, like subtle art of not giving a fuck. It's like that kind of is, a little bit of it, where it's like, it's the band that you're, in some ways, like not, the one that you don't have the 5-year plan or vision for, that you're like, it almost has a freeing essence to it. So that's not surprising.
So Joe, after going through jamming with the homies, y'all make this record and end up breaking up. Is that, or like hiatus, or like in like a year after Parrot Flies comes out? Is that like, what was the like thought on that?
Well, the thought on that was, so we had a 5-week tour, US 5-week tour planned with our buddies in Snowing in 1994, all crammed inside a van and with a trailer, bunch of stinky drunk idiots. The day of mastering this record, I recut a guitar solo because I never liked what it was. And then we went to mastering. We were there all night because Ryan Schwab, our friend, was like doing it. So I was in the other room, like, because once I heard things on his speakers, I was like, yo, let me change this real quick. So he's like, yeah, do it while I'm doing this song. So we had like this like factory going on. I'd be in headphones, like adjusting something, just like overthinking everything, because at this point it was the second record.
Yeah.
So to me, it was like a little more important. I'm starting to understand what recording is all about, and thinking I know more than I do, and trying to do my best in general. Either way, so we get it mastered, we stay up all night, we find an all-night diner, Pete, Tank, and I. We come back, we smoke cigarettes in the garage and listen to the record. And I remember just us looking at each other being like, the next one's going to be great. We were all just like, this is good, but we can do better than this. And then the very next day, we spent the whole day prepping for tour. And that whole next night, we didn't sleep at all, printing T-shirts. And the very next morning, we got in the van and went on tour. And so I think we got the CDs pretty shortly after that. And we put it out on the internet. So the record came out in the middle of that tour. And and so the next tour we did, the next big one was, the biggest one we had done to date would have been with Joyce Manor. Yeah. And in the middle of that tour, which was our first like foray into playing like clubs and, maybe getting a couple, getting a pizza and a couple free beers. And like, it was new for Joyce Manor too. Yeah. We were just like fans of each other's bands. And we're like, wow, this is crazy. People live like this.
It's true what they say. Yeah. Yeah.
We can like hear what's happening on stage because there's monitors. It's like, but either way, in the middle of that tour, we're in Canada. Tank gets a phone call and I see him on the phone. Like Pete and I are going to get bagels or something. We're like, what the fuck are you doing on your phone? That costs money. and then he just like looks at me and like, well, this is a podcast, so you can't see what I'm gesturing, but he makes like the pregnant belly gesture.
Yep.
And we're just like, oh, band's over. It was just, there wasn't, we weren't going to bring a new life into this, sleeping on people's floors, not making any, sustainable amount of income lifestyle. So that was just, there was never really a discussion. It was just like, well, that was that.
Life happens. Life just went and happened. And I know that feeling too. It's interesting too, because I've talked with so many friends, a lot of whom are you either just mentioned or are probably also mutual friends, where there's those moments where you're usually on tour as it happens. And it just, you're like, oh, that's going to change things a whole lot.
Yeah.
Like shooting. I talk about this a lot, where our drummer Michael chose to tell us that he was quitting the band as we are taking promo pictures for the record before Upsides came out many years ago.
Wow.
That was like, okay, I'm going to go out here on the curb and call maybe like the only two people that I think still care about me and try to like have them talk me off this ledge right now, because I'm like, I kind of we were ready to go all in, and now our drummer is quitting, and we just had him take pictures for the insert. So dude, life happens. But that doesn't change the fact that y'all had already cemented this record and gotten it tracked, and I think it's interesting too, and part of the reason why I think people are still talking about it, still referencing it in a lot of circles, and I'd love to start unpacking some of those reasons and how they kind of came about creatively for you, especially playing guitar in it. And as you mentioned, now you've gone on to, you mentioned trying to be in so many bands. Actually, it turns out you're kind of, in your own way, have been in and out of a lot of bands since then in the last decade by having a helping hand on the production front, right? So that's also really interesting, and I think I wanted you to kind of start walking into how that kind of all came about in terms of the actual tracking process. This show is, after all, called The Record Process. So we should probably get to that at some point. But yes, I love focusing in on the time and space. And a lot of people were like, dude, that record was incredible. Like, why did it just stop? It's like, well, life, but it also doesn't take away from the lifespan it then kind of had after it came out and what happened, which is something we always like to focus on. But Tom and I were like, dude, this is a really interesting one, because it kind of did continue doing its own thing and becoming this lore in a lot of those sects for the decade after, which I think is really cool and a testament to the record at hand. So let's talk about what the tracking looked like. And I mean, wherever you want to jump in, what that looked like, what the sessions looked like, what the thought process was.
Sure. It's a lot.
Dude, unpack it as you will.
A lot of feelings about it, because I was making it around the same time as the first Hop Along record, which I was just producing. So like, I'd sort of built, we sort of had like a recording studio going. Like at this point, it was like, I think we were calling it the Headroom by now, but it was just like a pile of Kyle Pulley and I's gear.
Yeah.
which wasn't great, but it was enough to make a record, which, you can make a record on anything.
Right.
But so I did feel like an amount of pressure on myself to make it really as good as it could possibly be as a engineer, which, I was struggling with my engineering skills, but the production and my playing and the songs, it was just like, I cared a lot, and I might've cared too much because we had lost a guitar player. And for the first record that would put us in this position to make a second one that people were going to care about is because a lot of people liked the first record. And the first record had another guitar player who was helping, doing a ton of heavy lifting with the songwriting and the guitar parts because he's a genius guitar player. So the pressure felt very much on me to do as much as possible and work my ass off. We did the first one. Okay, so we recorded it twice. The first time we did it, we did it all to tape, to a click, in the spot that was in Big Mama's warehouse, which we called the part of it we called the headroom. I did it all to tape after we tracked the basics, which was, we didn't do it live. So it was drums, the bass track, classic. But I was alone doing the guitars. So I got the guitar tone. I'd bring Peter in because we lived together. Like, what do you think of this guitar tone? He'd go, great. But then he'd leave. So I'm tracking the guitars and using my big toe to hit play and record on the tape machine on a 2-track, 24-inch. And then I just do it again and do it again. And like, I would have to play all these things straight through and play them perfectly because it's tape. And because I was so paranoid about it, I recorded every part twice. So I used, I'd use 4 tracks for every guitar part because I'd record the exact same thing perfectly twice in case there was something I didn't like about one of them.
Whoa.
It was a very intense exercise, and it was probably the best I've ever been at the guitar, actually. Dude, just like having to like nail that shit, like never mind just being so paranoid that I had to nail it twice.
There's no way you don't come out. I knew I was going to dump it in the
computer. Yeah. I was like, I was cracked out during that time of my life. But anyway, so we're listening to things like we started doing, we jumped in the computer, we started doing rough mixes, started doing the vocals, and like some of it's just not fucking clicking. Some songs like feel good. We like what's going on, but some of them just like are missing something. It just feels lackluster. I don't know if it's sonic or feel. We decided it was both. And we picked the songs we didn't like. And it turns out the songs with the more energy, like a lot of the faster, quicker songs, we retracked. We went to a church that our friends, it's called Rock to the Future, was their program they ran. Yeah, it's a super cool thing they do. I think you guys might have had some involvement in something.
I love it. Dude, I was years ago when I was living in Fishtown, I think that was even before that. Well, I was before I moved down to Fishtown, I actually, when they first started doing like the weekly summer camps, they needed help, and friend of a friend like reached out and I was like, yeah, I'm just like kind of chilling here, for the next month or so. Sure, I'll come down and do that, and hopped in, and I love that, and I always sing their praise. They were actually looking for another like bass coach or drummer, and I was like, my drummer lives in Fishtown now. I don't know what he's doing, but dude, so that's great. So it was probably that church over there on like Trenton or whatever, and yeah,
that's exactly what it was. So they were nice enough to let us use that. We also had the kids sing on, because I was recording these albums sort of simultaneously. We had a children's choir sing on a Hop Along song and an Algernon song. So they're both on both those records. So so we re-recorded a lot of it to the church. I was like, let's get out of this fucking space. Let's do it somewhere else. I brought a bunch of gear, didn't worry about the sounds as much. And we just retracked it all live without a click.
Cool.
And so half the record is that, and half of it is the tape one. The tape stuff sounds better. It's like slower. It's meatier sounding. It just sonically is richer. The stuff that was not, which you use like a Motu, like total piece of shit interface. And, I listen to it. It rubs me a little bit the way it sounds. But I'm like, whatever, it's punk. It sounds good enough.
Dude, it worked.
I don't need to worry about this now.
I know. And I listening back to it.
It's also done. It's forever. So there's nothing I can do about it.
Dude, right? And that's, we're always our own worst critics, especially when it's like, how many records and songs, have you kind of come through and pulled through since then, since tracking that?
Yeah.
It's we're all in that same boat. I still look back, and we all look back at shit that you did a decade, 2 decades ago, and you're like, Oh no. But it did its part in like the story. It got you to where you wanted to go and it made an impact. Who cares? You know,
Totally.
That's a great point. I love that. Yeah. So you like sewed. Now I'm curious, like, because I can now go back not having known that that's what you meant by like recording it twice and kind of. So there are tracks from like what I'll call the like manic tape sessions. Mm-hmm. And then there are also tracks on the record that are from those Rock to the Future sessions.
Correct.
Okay. So which is which, and you know, like, is there a standout where you're like, this one could only have existed, or did you do the whole record at the church as well and then pick?
We did the whole thing twice and picked the best of each.
Wow.
Totally fucking insane.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Not a luxury a lot of bands get or are willing to undertake either. That's awesome.
Well, it's expensive. I mean, I was the person recording it, you know what I mean? So there wasn't a cost involved, just our sanity and not having day jobs.
Yeah. Well, you were willing to punish yourself on both sides of that glass too, which is also, you know, to your credit, I guess, in a lot of ways that you were willing to take it on. You're like, yeah, no, I'll do this. I'll set all this up and I'll figure it all out. And then I'll also play it all live. That's awesome.
Well, you know, I don't want to blame anybody else. Like if it sucked, I wanted it to be like my fault or our fault. You know what I mean? And also we didn't have any money. Like we had no income. Our rent was $333.
Oh, I like that number.
Yeah. So it was very easy to, skate by on jamming. Yeah. And, having handfuls of change.
Dude, totally. That's amazing.
And eating out of the trash a lot.
Was there the thought that like when, I guess, retracking, was there the thought of like trying to keep some kind of consistency at least in like on your end as like tone wise?
No, it was the same. I gravitate towards similar guitar tones, and bass tones, but other than that, no.
Yeah, just fucking throw shit up and love it.
You weren't trying to fake it out and have it be like seamless. Like was the intent, do you think back then, to pick which ones from each, or the intent was, let's see if we can do the whole record and have it sound better? And then you just decided to kind of pick and pull on the back end?
Good question. I don't totally remember. I think there was ones we knew we wanted to redo, and there was ones we're like, well, let's see if we can beat it.
Totally.
Oh, that's awesome. I mean, we just kind of, with this new Wonder Years record, this was the first time that we have songs across the record that were like 4 songs that we did in Philly, actually at Studio 4. So that live room
rad.
For drums. And then the rest of the record we did at 606, which is like the Foo Fighters studio out in the Valley.
Oh, shit.
Massive drum room, dude. Yeah, we can talk gear. That was a nutty, a whole thing. We actually, if you're listening to this, it's probably maybe been the episode that just came out last week, but we had Steve Evitz on to talk about that and the process of doing drums and bass on that record on that Neve.
I want to listen to that.
Yeah, so it was a lot of fun, but that was the first time that we'd ever done that, and that was the whole thing that myself, Nick, Matt, a lot of the guys that are also like concerned with like the sonic cohesion of things like that and knowing how a different room will affect the overall foundation of something. We were like, it's going to be 2 very different rooms and drum sounds. Like, are we going to be able to do it? And we did. Vince Ratty helped out a lot of trying to massage both of them to have it feel cohesive.
Did Vince mix it?
Vince did mix it, yes.
Cool.
And he did a great job. And
as he does.
We love him. He's been in the family for so long. But anyway, that being the thing, I know that anybody, it's like the church that you're talking about, that's a much larger open space, very echoey than I'm sure where you did it at like the Big Mama spot. So that's why I was asking, because that is and now I'm going to go listen back to the record again and I'm going to be like, I think this is a church. I'm like, I almost don't want to ask you and be like, is this a church one or is this a like Big Mama's one? See if I can tell, but. Taking a minute here to shout out our good friends at Sheet Happens Publishing. Back with us again for Season 3. They are a company that works directly with artists to create accurate and immersive tab books, vinyl, and other merch that allows fans to get one step closer to perfecting the soundtrack of their lives. As many of you may know, I had the pleasure of working side by side with them to put together a book for my band, The Wonder Years, and believe me, they are incredibly thorough and always dedicated to artist-approved accuracy in every one of their books. Every tab book comes with the accompanying guitar profiles, which allow you to jump right into playing along with all of your favorite tracks. So all you need to do is head over to sheethappenspublishing.com to check out everything they have to offer, and be sure to enter the code TRP15 at checkout for 15% off your first purchase. Or you can find the link in our show notes, and again, that's promo code TRP15.
So I guess let's jump right into like the mix of it. So like going through and mixing this after retracking it and double tracking your guitars and like just going through like this insanity. How was there any like process during the mix phase that you were just like trying to separate yourself as like the producer engineer from like the player?
No, because it was almost a luxury, because it's like at that point, if we're mixing, like, and if a part still isn't working, it's probably not the fucking mix.
Yeah.
Like, I wasn't crushing the mix by any means, but like there's a point where it's like, all right, it's good enough. This sounds like us. You can hear everything. Like, but if a part wasn't working, I was able to like walk backwards and like either retract something or add something or take something out and put something new in. So there was like a ton of that stuff, because every part that came up, I personally wanted to be engaged with.
Of course.
And so there's tons of overdubby little things and lots of like backup vocals that I wrote and stuff that were just like, I need to make myself, this part needs to click for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to sit here and there's no point in mixing any further until I feel that way.
I think, Joe, you're maybe the first like producer, engineer, artist that we had that like mixed the record that we're talking about.
Oh, I think you're right, Tom. Yeah.
It's a different headspace, but I think you kind of put it perfectly. Like if the part wasn't working, you have the art, like yourself to blame rather.
I'm just so vain. I can't, I can't let go.
Totally.
Me.
Well, and what's cool about that, Joe, is then because of that, because you were wearing, you have that trifecta hat stack because of this, with this record specifically at this point in your career, you were there and able to say, it's the part. I can fix that. Whereas if you were just somebody that like with another record, you're like, I can't make a different part here. All I can do is like maybe a little edit, but it's like, this is kind of what it is. So my options are bury it in the mix, mute it, or just kind of put your hands up, right? And figure out the best way to make it work. But you, in that way, probably this project, more than a lot of others that you work on, blur the line maybe, because you were like, nope, we're going back to tracking again real quick. And it's like, and I actually what I'm realizing too is I love that, because so many times with a lot of the different perspectives that come up in these interviews, it's very like this portion of the process is zeroed in on. But in this way, it's like, you were never really done until, like you said, literally mastering. You were recutting a solo to like, to feed it to get it back to Ryan. And I think that's really interesting. And I think that only happens when you're in a position like you are, where you're the guitar player. You also tracked it and you wrote everything and have the agency to be like, nah, I'm going to do something different there, or it needs a little something more. I think that's really cool. Is that how you saw it at the time, and that like having that freedom, or do you not even think about it?
It was like being in my own personal like interstellar hell, but I'm Matthew McConaughey. It's just like, going back in time, going back and forward. No, I just saw it as I need to make myself happy, and however that needs to, I need to like it. So whatever the road to that is I will beg, crawl, steal, and cheat my way to it.
Totally.
Dude, yes.
Even if it fucking drives me insane.
which it usually does. Yeah, let's all be honest. There's definitely a level of that baked into everything.
No, but my big takeaway from like that time, like between the first Hop Along record and the second Algernon record, was not to sound like mighty or higher mighty or anything, but just like a work ethic. Like you really have to impress yourself. And like, I don't understand when people come to the studio and like aren't prepared, but just like wrote something that they obviously just kind of wung. And there's plenty of bands where that works. Like if you're going to go in there and just capture the live thing and it's a little sloppy and it's whatever, that's fine. I've been in bands like that. That works. But there's bands that aren't that. And I'm like, what are you doing here? Like, is this the best thing you can come up with? Like, I don't say that, but I'm like, well, like I'll find a nicer way of bringing up something about the part, and they'll be like, yeah, I don't really like this part. I'm just like, well, then why didn't you rewrite it? Like, why don't you love this? Or why doesn't like the rest of the band at least love it? And you're like, they love it when I play this part, but I'm not that into it. Like, whatever it is. So just like always trying to impress yourself and doing your best, because then you can't blame anybody else if you worked your hardest. And if nobody else likes it, like the fans or whatever, who it is you're making it for doesn't like it, then I'm personally okay with that, because I couldn't have done better.
It's a lot easier to swallow.
I did my best.
Yeah.
It's easier to swallow. It's like, oh, cool. They don't like this. Like, I fucking love the Dogs on Acid record I did, which was like a lot of people from Algernon.
Yep.
And it wasn't that popular. And I'm like, I kind of don't, I mean, I wish it wasn't. I don't understand why it wasn't, but I don't care because I think it's dope.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dude. And that's honestly the best place to be, because it's like, and yeah, I'm sure like there are a lot of bands and these conversations of like the appeasing yourself and then like the artistic fulfillment, and like ultimately it's the expectations that'll kill you of like what you hope other people think. It's like, if you fulfill the expectations of yourself in that way and you're like, this is literally better than I even thought it could be, I'm ready to let it go, then you check the butt, you did your job, right? And that's ultimately going to be, if you can string as many of those together, it's going to be way better career, dude. And I love that about it, where you were like, it's all gut, and you're like, if it's a mix thing, maybe it's actually a tracking thing or a part thing. Let me go fix that. And you can tinker at that, and you learn, like you said, you learn that work ethic. And I think a lot of what you were mentioning with like other bands that'll come into the studio, be like, yeah, we want to, track through like 7 songs. Can we do that in about 3 hours? That kind of stuff, where I almost would rather, and Tom, you feel free to hot take or fight me on this as well, but I think you probably agree to some extent, where it's like, I would rather a band member fight me on a part, be like, no, I love it. I went through this, and this. This is the iteration, where it's like, even though that can walk and talk like some demo-itis sometimes, I would rather like them know, they'd be like, no, here's why I love it, and here's why, because it works with this thing and that thing. It's like, at least I know that you fully believe in it and really took time to craft it, right? Even if I like, it's ultimately not up to me, and not up to if you're producing, engineering, whatever. It's like, it's their record, so I would rather you come in with feelings about it, as opposed to just like, yeah, it's fine, I'll just throw it out. It was just kind of there, it's like, that almost breaks my heart. It's like, then you didn't do the toiling and self-doubt checks that I think are really important to getting into that like driver's seat to track these things and cement them.
Case, to sum it up in like one word, would be intent. If the intent is not there, then what is?
Right.
And like, clearly, not to play the transition game, but clearly there was intent in this record. There was the intent of ripping your face off with some sick guitar licks, as well as everything else. But so Joe,
yes,
the Parrot Flies gets reissued, right?
Mm-hmm.
By Asian Man
and Lauren Records sort of tag teamed it.
Cool. Yeah. Awesome. So that was in like what, 2018?
Was it that long ago? Time is insane.
That's what the internet says, but
I believe it. I believe everything that's on there.
It's on the internet. It's true. Right.
On the internet, it's true.
I believe it.
Y'all are touring on this record. What was the thought process of coming back and cruising on this record and giving it to people on tour?
Well, there was not necessarily about this record as much as like when the idea of the reissues came up, obviously people were like, well, it'd be nice if we had something to package this with, wink, wink. And we're like, no. And like, obviously in the time since we've disbanded, there's been offers and things of that nature, and it just never seemed right. And then with this, it's like, it's silly because it's like, well, not even that important or huge of an ordeal. Like, so we got an offer from something else, and it was probably like the least amount of money at any of the offers. So it didn't even have to do with the money. It was just the timing and the idea of whether we could do it or not. And I think at this point, people were like kind of open to it. So we hopped on the phone. We're like, do you guys want to like do this next year or in 2 years or at some point? And then we were all talking. This first time we'd all been on a phone call or in the same room together for forever. And we're all like, yeah, I'm ready. Let's do it. And literally a day and a half later, I was on a phone call with our booking agent. And the day after that, we had like a potential routing. I was like, what just happened?
The floodgates have opened. Yes.
I was like, what? Wait, what? Why am I looking at tour dates for something a couple months from now? What?
Yep. So we've got your whole next 18 months planned out. Here it is.
Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of pent up demand, I mean, we can't be fully surprised because that record, like we said, seeped into the DNA of a lot of other bands along that way. And I'll admit that and say that because I know it might be a little bit more difficult and you might not want to say that on your end. But I will say that as someone that both in the like Philly world and outside of it saw that in bands that became friends of art, bands like Modern Baseball and, that I know looked up to those early records and that and I think, it's only fitting that it's just like, go give the people what they want if the chance and opportunity presents itself. And I think that's really exciting. You're probably, as this goes, in the midst or about to ship out on that. Tell us about what it's going to be like for you then, now that we've talked through the creation of this and it's been cemented like that. What's your approach going to be to going and playing these songs live? And how do you think that's going to look, both as a guitar player? Are you going to try and do anything different? Is hindsight going to be 20/20 on some of those parts that you're like, I think I can do this a little cooler now? What's going to, because you've evolved a lot as a player, as a producer, the way you think about stuff. So what do you think? What are your thoughts around that?
I haven't started learning anything and I don't remember any of it.
Love it.
Nice.
Love it.
Let me put it that way. Because most of the stuff was in different tunings. I remember a good chunks of like the 3 songs that are in standard because my guitars would be in standard laying around the house and I pick them up. But everything else I'm going to have to learn almost note for note. And literally like learn fresh because all the recordings have, for the most part, have 2 guitars. And at some point we were playing shows with 1 guitar player. So even in the later stuff, I had recorded 2 guitar parts. So I was combining them in some way, shape or form, or just doing what sounded best for live, but, picking and choosing my favorite parts of everything. So I've actually never learned or known how to play since the last day I recorded it, what these guitar parts are. So I'm setting myself into a very intense, calling it guitar boot camp.
That's right.
Starting, I guess, like a month from now, I got to finish some records. And then after that, it's just going to be, guitar boot camp. Which I'm looking forward to. No, I'm very excited to like feel like a full-time musician again and just have that be the thing that I surround myself with without any I love mixing records and producing bands. I absolutely love it. But it'll be nice to just do thing again.
It'll be nice to do it again. I look forward to I hope I'll be able to get to see you do the thing again. But yeah, it's going to be going into a windowless room and some hurdy fingers all over again. That's nice, dude. Building up the calluses. But yeah, that's why I was asking too, because it's because of like the member shift and then you kind of doing double duty and rearranging let me take this and see how it works. It's kind of relearning it all over again. I mean, we just did like 10-year, album plays on all those older things. Like, aside from being like, I can't believe I wrote that. That's so cheesy.
Yeah.
Aside from like getting over that and then being able to do it with a smile on your face, I'm like, some of this stuff, it's weird that I'm like, I actually haven't listened to this since we put it out. And it's somehow still kind of weirdly there in like the innate way that I would be like, my brain just always kind of wanted to do something like that. So I remember it quicker. But then there's other stuff where I'm like, I have no idea what's happening there. And that was 2 guitars. And our band has been for that long, like 3 guitars. So, so it's like we've done the Frankensteining and splitting off. That's so awesome to hear. I'm glad I asked that too, because that'll be a whole kind of re-envisioning of itself where you get to look back at those songs and I guess kind of like resurrect that mindset, but also be like, well, now I know all of this stuff of like, I'm a better guitar player. I'm a
Let's hope.
Hey, after you spend all that time in a windowless room.
It feels like an uphill battle at this point, but we'll see. Hopefully I get there.
After Joe's guitar boot camp, I have no doubt you'll be back in tip-top shape. Dude, but that's so awesome and so freeing and exciting, too, to get to do it. Because it's not that you haven't been playing, obviously. You know, like, I'm sure you do every day in some capacity, whether it's, on tour, whether it's hop along in the studio. But to unpack a whole album worth of and more material like that, it's got to be both overwhelming but also exciting.
It's both those things.
Yeah,
yes,
man.
Exactly.
Dude, well, I know a lot of people that are looking forward to it. I wish you well with that rehearsal. And
thank you.
Again, this has been amazing. I will let you get back to the incredible cabin life that you are living right now in the Catskills. And we will look forward. In the meantime, anybody that, if they're listening to this right now, when it goes out into the ether, where, if any place should they look for more details on the Algernon stuff, your stuff, Headroom, give the obligatory, kind of shout out stuff, for yourself and all this before we go.
Sure. I guess I can do that if I know what it is off the top of my head. I'm Best Sandwich Ever on Instagram. There's I think it's just AlgernonCadwallader.com, I believe, which is simply populated with some tour dates, which is a new thing for us.
Yeah.
And ways to listen to and or buy the music. I think Hop Along the Band is the name of that.
I think so. We'll find it, and it'll be in the show notes too. So actually,
it's all pretty Googleable.
It's all just rip a Google, look in the show notes. We're gonna
a quick Google.
We're gonna give you everything you could possibly need. But dude, that's awesome. If you get a chance, go see it live. See how Joe's boot camp worked out for him. I'm sure.
No promises.
I'm sure you won't want to miss it. Yeah. But that's awesome, man. Joe, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. We really appreciate it, buddy.
No, thank you guys. Really. Thank you.
We talk a lot about the phases of making a record on this show. I mean, the concept for the show itself even started out with us attempting to break down the writing, the recording, the editing, the mixing. But that's not always how things line up. And I think this interview and Joe talking about this record totally blows all of that out of the water and shows what it's like to be someone that is charged with wearing so many hats that they are in a position where they can even go back and recut a solo while the thing's being mastered. They can make decisions at the very end, and sometimes that can be counterproductive. That is true. But I think also there's an incredible freedom in understanding that you can be flexible with some of these things, and you can put yourself in a scenario where you don't have to worry so much about getting each section perfect, which, it can be a really nice workflow when you're able to commit to things like that. And we do always preach the value of that for sure. But I think Joe unpacked something here that made this record extra special and really unique in its own way because of the malleability that he had as the guitarist, one of the songwriters, the engineer, and having that hand in it. And I think that really made it special. And I hope it gave you a newfound appreciation for that album if you've been a fan. Now listen, if you're looking for another trusted source of great artist interviews, then music blog Brooklyn Vegan has a brand new show for you. They have been covering this kind of stuff since 2004 when they first launched, and now they have a podcast called The Brooklyn Vegan Show, available everywhere that this one is. The show is hosted by senior editor Andrew Sacker and has already come out of the gate swinging, featuring interviews with Barry Johnson of Joyce Manor, Jeff Rickley of Thursday, Anthony Green, and many more. So go check it out, and we will see you next week on The Record Process.